Okay, well, I said in my comments before, or when I sent out the first email, that I wanted to talk about the rearward flows and get a better understanding out there about the rearward flows. Now, you need to understand that, of course, when I started this out, the only thing I really knew to do was to put my hands on people and just like one pair. I knew that there was something going on between my hands and it was directional from, in my case, to my left hand to my right hand. Most of you are the other, all of you are the other way. But anyway, so um, it was very simple. I determined that it was definite by um, doing. I had an early class where I had a whole room full of the everybody in the class lying on the floor, and I had everybody do flows up the right side and down the left side, and everybody really liked it and some fell asleep. And then I said, okay, now we're going to do it the other way just to see how that works. They did it the other way, and everybody got disturbed or upset, didn't want to feel that again. So it clearly told me that there is definitely a right way and a wrong way, that there's a pattern to the whole thing. Now, there's patterns to every um, field in physics. The weather patterns, you've seen them all on the weather maps where there are big swirls, and they'll say there's a low pressure area and another swirl that says it's a high pressure area, and you notice that they're going in opposite, the storm is going in opposite directions. Well, in the case of the pressure ones, there's a movement in the middle of the low pressure ones from the ground up to the sky, lifting up moisture from the ground and developing clouds in the sky. Hi, Adriana. Glad you got on board. Anyway, so those were the things that I worked with. Now, in the beginning, the simple Shen that we were doing in the beginning, or simpler than we're doing now, is to put sending hands behind the centers and receiving hands above the center and assist the movement that would be normal in that direction. And we did that for quite a while. And if you go into the old handbook that I put out, which made about a couple of years after had been doing some of this and teaching some classes, doesn't talk about the circle of the rearward flows at all. But there came a time when I was aware that my heart felt stuffy or something, and that there was some pain over to the right hand side of my body, and emotionally, I had an uncomfortable relationship with a person that was kind of peripheral to Shen, wasn't actually in Shen, but it was. I couldn't move about it. I couldn't do anything about it. Couldn't quite figure out what was going on. Anyway, I had a girlfriend at that time, and she was visiting, and we were doing Shen, and she was doing this series of Shen on me. And I said, I've been thinking if there's the flows from the back to the front, there must be flows going from the front to the back in between the centers, but we've never used them. And what I'd like you to do after you've kind of gotten me relaxed is to do those rearward flows, and let's see what happens. And so she did. I went pretty deep, and she started doing the flows in between the rearwards in between my heart and solar plexus. And all of a sudden, I had this vivid image of a big rock floating upward and dissipating. Whoa. And when I came out of it, my feelings, my heart felt lighter, but my attitude toward this person I was upset with was I was angry. And I wanted to do something about it, which I did. But anyway, with that, I recognized the value of the rearward flows, and I called everybody in that was doing Shannon. We did a new class. I said, look, I want to add what we're doing. So I had the pleasure of doing a whole, I don't know, there was probably maybe 8 or I guess 10 people in that class. And every one of them had a movement in their process, that the things happened that hadn't happened before. They went deeper. Their feelings were stronger. Everybody was excited. And at that point, I developed a system where I started doing a series of three rearward flows in kind of a line across the body, and then 3 frontward flows across the body. And eventually that developed in doing the circle that we do of maybe 6 or 8 of rearward flows around the center that we're working on, and then moving to the next. And so it was clear to me that the whole of it was a major advancement in our techniques and our abilities to help our clients. And there was no question about that. So that's why I I always do those processes with a new client before I start really as sorry, just phlegm in my throat here. Anyway, so there is what I expect to be done, what we teach to be done to the interns and practice is to do the rearward flows before we do the frontward flows. Now, there is one exception to that, but only one exception to that I can think of. And that is when a client comes into your premises, or maybe she's been there and you're doing an interview and all of a sudden the client starts to cry, that is not the time to say, oh, what's going on? Tell me what you're feeling. Has this gone on long? No. Just don't say anything. Just get them up on the table and start doing frontward flows. Don't worry about the rearward flows. Get right onto it. So, anybody have any questions or comments about all of this? Nothing?
Richard, I've got a question.
Yeah.
So there is a chart that does rearward flows all around the head.
Yeah.
When would you know to do that?
I'm trying to think of a special instance. I had a situation where I felt like I couldn't explain it well, but I felt like there was something around my head. And it was like out here. I don't know what, I couldn't really explain what that meant like there was nothing out there. But working around the head changed that. It can have some effect on if somebody's thoughts were all kind of jumbled, they couldn't focus on things and couldn't maintain anything, was their thoughts were jumping from one place to another. I believe I would want to do the rear circle, the outer edge of the rearwards all the way around, and plus flows through the head.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Anybody else? Well, do any of you have any technical issues, technical questions that you'd like to bring up or you'd like to talk about? Lauren,
Hi. Yes, I would like to ask about the rearward flows with the IBS protocol. I
with
recently
the
had a,
with the what?
with the regards to the IBS protocol.
Okay.
Yeah. I had a client just 10 days ago. She she had a lot of stuff at her cath solar plexus.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, if I tried the IBS protocol with her, it might help her. But when I looked at her history form, it was just mainly solar plexus cath stuff. But it's the first time so far that I've worked with somebody where it just felt completely like there was nothing going on, just dead. I don't know how else to describe it. So I worked at the lines a lot. And after the first session, I didn't really get into the centers because I just kept doing the rearward flows. And then I saw her within the 48 hours and I tried again and still there was just nothing. I was
Did you not do any frontward flows?
I did a little bit of frontward flows, but I didn't feel much at all, and I spent a lot of time on the rearwards. So maybe I did like 5 minutes at each center, but the rest of the time I did a lot of the rearwards, just trying to get some kind of flow there. And then in the second session, I spent longer at the centers, but I still felt like there was just nothing, absolutely nothing happening. But for the client, she just seemed to sleep. Then the third session, I worked with her again and I did the same session again. Then I saw her today, and only today, finally, I felt I could actually feel the unlocking. I know that sounds strange, but I'm sure you guys understand what I'm
Yep.
meaning when, yeah, I could feel that everything started to unlock, and I did a double session with her today, and finally it's opened up. But I wondered
Good.
if with these unlocking flows, why would somebody be so dead? Like, why did it take nearly 4 sessions of the same to get in there? I mean,
Well, I'm
just
afraid I can't answer why.
yeah. Does anyone else had that? I was just next to him.
I think
Yeah.
recently I've heard something. Well, during rearward flows, nothing is happening.
Yeah.
So or they want to stay at a rearward flow a long time, and sometimes perhaps it's because of that they stay for too long at a rearward flow before moving on. They feel that
Right.
they feel that they have to stay at it. For example, we all learn 3 minutes, so it's
Yes.
to
Yeah.
continue to do that rather than maybe after a minute or something, move on to the next center and
Right.
keep
So I should have
doing that.
maybe moved on quicker than
See what
staying there.
happens. Yeah,
Okay.
you know.
Okay. Okay. So I know next time, rather just if I'm not feeling anything, even it just to
Yeah,
move on
that's
after
that's
minutes.
that's been my experience. Mm.
Okay.
I've had clients that seemed to be just a block of granite. It just took
Yeah.
forever to get things started.
Yeah.
But when it
Okay.
does, it goes.
Mm.
Um, for anything, so mostly what you were working at was around the cough, and I would try to incorporate more root work with if it took forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
Issues at the root are usually more deeply buried than anything else. I found that they don't usually come up or resolve early in the sessions that um, I know
Okay.
for myself, I had for a long time, I would have, trying to remember it in better form here, um, to recall early on. But there was seemed to be a blockage down there, but it was after many, many sessions that there was one session where all of a sudden I was in what was very, very deep, and I had this image of a half a dozen spears or knives being thrust at me, and there was a big release, and I came out of it. I don't know what that was about, but the thickness of the blockage there was gone, and a lot of the deeper stuff in people doesn't ever reveal itself in any sensible form, but it does in the person's movement through the world and their attitude. They say things like, "Well, I don't know what's different, but I just feel better," something like that. Anybody else?
I
have
only,
a question. Oh, go ahead, Rosie.
no, I was only going to say that the times when I found flows being like going through sludge or really, really difficult is sometimes people with kind of, I don't know whether the client I had would define it as IBS, but was on a lot of tranquilizers. And my experience, I've worked with several people on tranquilizers, and it's like, it feels to me like working through sludge to try and get flows through
Yeah.
for quite some time. I don't know. Uh, I got, well, in fact, actually, that client stopped because there was shut to lockdown at the beginning of COVID, so we couldn't go any further. But I do wonder about if people are on taking a lot of medication, how much point there is. It's difficult to say how much point there is trying, but because they're continually doing the same thing, taking all their meds and everything. Is it helpful just to keep going?
Well, then it certainly isn't going to hurt them, and it may help in. It's not going to adversely affect any medication that they're taking. And the medication in some cases may be making it more difficult for them to get
Yes.
into emotions or something like that, but we're not in a position to do anything about that.
No.
One thing that I wanted to mention overall, particularly when things get sludgy, I think it's easy to just get into a state where you sort of slow down yourself as a practitioner. Pay attention to your breathing. Has your breathing slowed down as you've been working with the client?
Mm-hmm.
And if you have any question, start bringing in breath. Be sure you're not hunched over the table where your cough is being compressed. Make sure that you're drawing in good breaths, and you may see that things start changing as you do that. Because it's very easy to um, um, I've occasionally seen or occasionally actually been working with someone where it was really hard to get the flows going. And I found myself getting sleepy and sleepier and sleepier,
Yeah.
and then realized what I was doing and got myself back out of that. Did get a message from Helena saying that she's sorry she couldn't make it. But anyway, one last request here before I quit recording. Anything anybody else like to bring up?
Yeah, it was kind of the opposite, really, when you have heat that doesn't resolve when you're doing like the relaxation flows.
Have
I
what?
find it usually resolves when you have heat that doesn't resolve very well with doing the peripheral, the relaxation flows.
Did you say heat?
So like,
Heat?
yeah,
Like their
yeah, heat.
bodies warm?
No, heat in your hands, heat in the
Oh,
flow,
oh,
and like specifically, like say from the knee down to the below the sole of the foot on the left side or something, and there's just heat, and it just is there for a long time, and it's.
oh. And
Mm.
it
I'm just
does it
wondering what
and it wasn't
that's.
occurring somewhere else in the body either. Is that right?
Um, a little bit, maybe actually on the other side as well, from the sole of the right foot to the knee, and a bit from the waist to the knees, but not as strongly. I found that from the behind the back of the left knee to the sole of the foot, and then transverse below the feet, there was a lot of heat in one
Hmm.
person, and it's like I sort of don't want to leave them with all that heat, but I was just doing a relaxation session, and yeah, I'm not sure what that was. They
Well,
were okay,
so in other words, but around the rest of the body, you didn't feel the heat that way.
not as strongly. No,
Hmm.
felt like maybe a roughness to the energy, but not as strong as this heat.
Are you aware if had they complained about heat in their legs or anything like that? Or were you aware of
No,
it? Did
no, they
you
didn't.
did you mention it to the client and ask them?
I think I did mention it. Um, they're they were quite new to. They didn't really say comment on it though. They're quite new to
Hmm.
Shen and not very connected to themselves yet. So
Mhm.
it was just yeah. I was wondering what it was. If it was
Well, I know that
releasing something.
I can't explain a lot about why that might happen, but I know that if I were doing that, I would try to do flows from the foot to the hip to get to get it balanced so it was the same as it was. In other words, I would do a section from the foot to the bottom of the from the bottom of the foot to the knee, and then or to just above the knee, and from just below the knee to the hip, and I would work in that area to try to get a consistent flow all the way. Does that make
Oh,
sense?
yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yeah. You.
All right. Well, I think I'll stop recording here. Oh, where am I? Oh, here we are. Okay, there it is.